I'm Sharon, 62 years old, a retired accountant from Chicago who never imagined my life would turn out this way. I raised my son Michael alone after my husband David died. We were inseparable, or so I thought. Everything changed when Katherine entered our lives. At that fateful brunch 3 weeks ago, she looked me straight in the eyes and said those words I'll never forget. "We've decided not to invite you for Christmas this year." I just nodded calmly, but inside my heart was breaking. Before I tell you what happened when I stopped being everyone's doormat, take a second to hit like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let me show you how everything changed. My life changed forever when my husband David died of a sudden heart attack. Michael was only 12, and overnight I became both mother and father to our sensitive boy. Those early days were a blur of grief counseling, learning to manage finances alone, and trying to maintain some sense of normalcy for my son. I'd been an accountant before David died, but afterward I took on extra clients and longer hours. Some nights I'd come home at 8 or 9 exhausted, but determined to help Michael with his homework before falling into bed. The sacrifice was worth it to see him thriving despite our loss. We developed special traditions to keep David's memory alive while creating our own unique bond. Every Sunday we'd make David's famous blueberry pancakes together. Michael would measure the ingredients while I told stories about his father. As he grew older, our weekend hiking trips became sacred time for heart-to-heart talks about school friends and eventually girls. Michael was always a sensitive, thoughtful child. For Mother's Day when he was 15, he saved his allowance for months to buy me a simple silver necklace I still wear today. He included a handwritten card that said, "To the mom who does the work of 2 parents, I notice everything." I cried for an hour after reading those words. His determination mirrored my own. He struggled with math, but would stay up late studying until he mastered each concept. When college application season arrived, he was accepted to Northwestern University with a partial scholarship. I was so proud, but worried about the remaining tuition. "Mom, I can go to community college first," he suggested, always thinking of our finances. "Absolutely not," I told him. "Your father and I started a college fund the day you were born, and I've been adding to it every month since he died." What I didn't tell him was that I'd taken out a second mortgage on our home to make sure there was enough. Some sacrifices children don't need to know about. Those college years were lean but wonderful. Michael thrived academically and called home twice weekly without fail. When he decided to attend law school afterward, I supported him completely, both emotionally and financially. I helped with his living expenses so he could focus on studies rather than working part-time. The day Michael passed the bar exam ranks among my proudest moments. Standing beside him at his swearing-in ceremony, I thought, "David, can you see our boy now? We did good." As Michael began his legal career at a small firm specializing in family law, our relationship remained strong. Sunday dinners at my house were non-negotiable, and he'd often stop by midweek just to check on me or help with household repairs. He consulted me about major decisions and valued my opinion. When Michael found a modest condo he wanted to purchase, I didn't hesitate to help. His starting salary at the law firm wasn't enough for the down payment, so I offered to co-sign the mortgage and contributed $20,000 toward the down payment. "Mom, you don't have to do this," he protested. "I want to," I assured him. "This is an investment in your future." Throughout his 20s and early 30s, I maintained our family home as the gathering place for holidays and celebrations. The 4-bedroom house was too large for just me, but I couldn't bear to sell the place where Michael grew up, where every corner held memories of our family unit. Despite starting his career, Michael faced student loan debt and the high cost of living in Chicago. There were times when I quietly paid off his credit card or covered his car repair bill. I never mentioned these things, considering it part of my role as his mother. Looking back, I realize I established a pattern of financial support that would later be expected rather than appreciated. At the time, though, it felt like the natural extension of the bond we'd forged through grief and perseverance. Everything changed 5 years ago when Michael met Katherine at a charity fundraiser. He called me the very next day, his voice animated in a way I hadn't heard before. "Mom, I met someone amazing last night," he gushed. "She's beautiful, smart, and has this confidence that just lights up the room." Katherine Ryan was a marketing executive for a luxury hotel chain. From her designer clothes to her perfect manicure, everything about her spoke of sophistication and ambition. When Michael first brought her to dinner at my home, I was admittedly intimidated, but determined to make a good impression. Katherine was polite and engaging, complimenting my home and asking thoughtful questions about my accounting practice. Yet there was something in the way her eyes scanned my modest living room that made me uncomfortable, as though she were appraising rather than appreciating. "This house has such potential," she said, in what I would later recognize as her backhanded compliment style. "You could really transform this space with the right designer." I overlooked these subtle slights, focusing instead on how happy Michael seemed. When he looked at Katherine, his face glowed with admiration. If she made my son happy, I was determined to welcome her into our lives. Their romance progressed at whirlwind speed. Within 9 months of meeting, Michael proposed with a diamond ring that I later discovered cost him 3 months' salary. When they announced their engagement at my dinner table, I embraced Katherine warmly. "Welcome to the family," I said sincerely, pushing aside the nagging worry about the speed of their relationship. Wedding planning began immediately, with Katherine envisioning an elaborate affair at one of Chicago's most exclusive venues. When Michael mentioned the estimated cost, I saw panic flash across his face. "I'd be happy to contribute," I offered. "I've been saving for your wedding day since you were born." Katherine's eyes lit up. "That's so generous, Sharon. We were hoping you'd want to be involved." What I didn't realize then was that involved meant financially, not personally. As weeks passed, Katherine made decisions without consulting me, from the venue to the florist to the menu. When I suggested incorporating some of our family traditions, like playing David's favorite song for the mother-son dance, Katherine smiled tightly. "We're really going for a more contemporary vibe," she explained. "But thank you for the suggestion." I ended up contributing $40,000 to their wedding money I'd been saving for retirement, but was given little say in any decisions. On the wedding day itself, I was seated at a table far from the main party with distant relatives rather than at the family table with Katherine's parents. The first holiday season after their wedding revealed more changes. Our tradition of Christmas Eve at my house was replaced by cocktails at an upscale restaurant. Michael arrived late and left early, explaining that they had other events to attend. "Katherine's networking is important for her career," he explained apologetically. "I tried connecting with Katherine one-on-one, inviting her to lunch, or suggesting we shop for Michael's birthday gift together. Her responses were always polite, but non-committal." "That sounds lovely, Sharon, but work is just so demanding right now." When I did manage to spend time with them, I noticed concerning changes in Michael's behavior. The son who once valued my opinion now deferred to Katherine on everything from which car to purchase to which friends they should socialize with. When I gently raised concerns about how quickly they were spending money on luxury items, Michael became defensive. "Katherine works hard, Mom. She deserves nice things, and so do I after all those years of studying." Most revealing were the rare occasions when I saw Katherine interact with Michael when she thought no one was watching. The warmth she displayed in public was replaced by a cold efficiency, directing rather than discussing. Once I overheard her in the kitchen criticizing Michael for talking too long with one of my neighbors. "We're not here to make friends with these people," she said sharply. "We need to leave by 8 for the Andersons' party." I kept these observations to myself, not wanting to risk my relationship with my son. Little did I know that relationship was already eroding beneath the surface, wearing away like a foundation in a slow flood. 2 years into their marriage, Michael and Katherine began complaining about the limitations of his condo. Katherine particularly disliked the neighborhood, which she deemed transitional. "We really need more space, especially in a better school district," Katherine mentioned during dinner at my house, "for when we eventually have children." Michael looked uncomfortable. "The kind of houses Katherine has in mind are a bit out of our price range right now." I recognized the opening for what it was. "Well, I'd be happy to help you get established in a family home. It's important to think about the future." Within a month, they found a 5-bedroom house in North Shore, one of Chicago's most expensive neighborhoods. The property was well beyond what 2 young professionals should reasonably afford, but Katherine had fallen in love with its prestigious address and high-end finishes. When Michael nervously showed me the mortgage paperwork, I understood why. Their combined incomes weren't sufficient for the loan amount they needed. Without hesitation, I offered to co-sign the mortgage and contribute to the monthly payments until Michael's law career advanced further. "This is just temporary," Michael assured me. "Once I make partner in a few years, we'll refinance." What followed was a stream of expenses I hadn't anticipated. Katherine hired an interior designer insisting that every room needed to be magazine-ready. When I visited after they moved in, I was shocked by the transformation. Custom furniture, imported fixtures, and hand-painted wallpaper had turned the already expensive house into a showcase. "Katherine has amazing taste, doesn't she?" Michael said proudly, though I noticed he winced slightly when I asked about a particularly elaborate chandelier. Soon they were hosting dinner parties and summer barbecues, inviting colleagues and new neighborhood friends. Curiously, my invitation to these events rarely materialized. When I mentioned this to Michael, he seemed genuinely surprised. "I thought you wouldn't be interested, Mom. It's just work people and Katherine's friends." When Katherine became pregnant with their first child, my grandson Jacob, I was overjoyed. Finally, I thought we would reconnect through this new family member. I offered to help prepare the nursery and arranged my schedule to be available after the birth. Yet when Jacob arrived, I discovered my role had been carefully predetermined. I was welcome to babysit on short notice when their nanny was unavailable or when they needed a night out. But for the baby's first Christmas, Katherine's parents were invited to stay for a week, while I was asked to visit only for Christmas dinner. "Katherine's mom is just more experienced with babies," Michael explained awkwardly when I questioned the arrangement, "and their guest room is more comfortable for overnight stays." Despite living just 30 minutes away compared to Katherine's parents' 3-hour drive, I found myself increasingly marginalized. I continued contributing to their mortgage and offered to pay for Jacob's preschool tuition when he turned 2. "That would be such a help," Katherine had said. "The Lakeside Academy is the best in the area, but the tuition is steep." When their daughter Emma was born last year, the pattern continued. I received calls when emergency childcare was needed, but was excluded from family photos and milestone celebrations. I learned about Jacob's first soccer game through Facebook photos posted after the fact. Last Christmas was particularly revealing. After years of subtle hints about my modest holiday decorations and traditional menu, I suggested they host the family celebration at their house instead. "Oh, we couldn't possibly," Katherine demurred. "Your house has all the Christmas traditions." What she really meant, I later realized, was that she didn't want to host, but still wanted to criticize my efforts. Throughout Christmas dinner, she made comments about the vintage ornaments on my tree and how quaint it was to serve the same dishes every year. After the holidays, Michael began avoiding my calls. Conversations became brief and superficial. "Just busy with work, Mom," became his standard response when I asked about his distance. In February, I discovered through a mutual friend that Michael, Katherine, and the children had gone to Aspen for a ski vacation. When I mentioned it to Michael, he was evasive. "It was a last-minute thing through Katherine's work. I meant to tell you." It was becoming clear that while my financial contributions were welcome, even expected, my presence in their lives was carefully managed. I was good enough to provide childcare and write checks, but not to be included in their carefully curated social image. I tried addressing my concerns with Michael over lunch one day, but he quickly became defensive. "Mom, we're just really busy right now. Katherine has a lot on her plate with work and the kids. Try not to take it personally." But it was personal. And the truth I was slowly accepting was that I had become an ATM with babysitting services, rather than a beloved mother and grandmother in their lives. The brunch invitation came unexpectedly after weeks of minimal contact. Katherine suggested Elysian, one of Chicago's most expensive restaurants, for Sunday at 11. I was surprised but hopeful that perhaps they wanted to reconnect. I spent extra time getting ready that morning, choosing a new blouse I'd purchased specifically for the occasion and styling my hair carefully. I brought small gifts for Jacob and Emma, books I knew they would love based on their current interests. Driving to the restaurant, I rehearsed stories about the children's latest activities to show my continued interest despite the distance they'd created. The maitre d' led me to a corner table where Michael and Katherine were already seated, heads bent over the menu. Katherine looked up first, her smile professional rather than warm. "Sharon, you look nice," she said, the compliment feeling more like an observation than genuine appreciation. Michael stood to kiss my cheek briefly. "Hi, Mom. Glad you could make it." The initial conversation flowed with the practiced ease of people accustomed to small talk. Katherine spoke about her recent promotion. Michael mentioned a case he was working on, and I shared news about my garden renovation. We placed our orders: eggs Benedict for Katherine's steak, and eggs for Michael, and a simple omelet for myself. It was after the server brought our mimosas that Katherine cleared her throat in a way I'd come to recognize as preceding a prepared statement. "Sharon, we wanted to talk to you about the upcoming holiday plans," she began, her voice measured. I took a sip of my drink, waiting. Michael suddenly became very interested in adjusting his napkin. "We've decided not to invite you for Christmas this year," Katherine continued. "We'll be hosting my family instead. We think it's time to start our own traditions in our home." Though the words hit me like a physical blow, I kept my expression neutral. Years of managing difficult clients as an accountant had taught me to maintain composure in uncomfortable situations. "I see," I said, simply placing my glass down carefully. Michael glanced up briefly. "We thought maybe we could do something before or after the actual day. Maybe brunch on the 23rd. The casual dismissal of our family traditions, the Christmas Eve dinner I'd prepared for 30 years, the morning ritual of cinnamon rolls and gift opening that Michael had loved since childhood was breathtaking in its callousness. The house just isn't really set up for large gatherings," Katherine added, though I knew their home had a dining room designed to seat 12. "And my parents are bringing my sister's family this year. It will be nice for the cousins to be together." I just nodded, trying to process this information while maintaining my dignity in the crowded restaurant. Around us, other families chatted animatedly, grandparents doting on grandchildren, the genuine warmth of their interactions making my isolation feel even more acute. We shifted to discussing other topics: Katherine's plans to redecorate their master bathroom, a colleague's retirement party, as if the Christmas conversation hadn't happened. The food arrived, and I methodically cut my omelet into small pieces, each bite tasting like cardboard. As we neared the end of the meal, Katherine checked her watch. "Oh, before I forget, Sharon, would it be possible to send next month's mortgage contribution a bit early? The property tax bill was higher than we expected this quarter." The request, coming moments after excluding me from a family holiday, was stunning in its lack of self-awareness. "And since you won't be busy with Christmas preparations," she continued, "we were hoping you could take the kids for a few days that week. My office party is on the 22nd, and our sitter is traveling home for the holidays." Michael at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Only if it's convenient for you, Mom," he added weakly. "I'll check my calendar," I replied noncommittally. The drive home was a blur. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, waiting until I was safely inside my house before allowing the tears to come. I sat in my living room surrounded by photographs chronicling Michael's life and our close relationship, wondering how we had arrived at this point. That evening, I pulled out old photo albums tracing Michael's growth from a toothless baby to a proud law school graduate. In every major moment of his life, I had been there supporting and celebrating him. Now I was being relegated to a convenience, a financial resource to be utilized when needed and ignored when inconvenient. The realization was painful, but clarifying. This wasn't a one-time exclusion, but the culmination of a pattern that had been developing for years, and I had allowed it to happen one small concession at a time. I woke the next morning with unexpected clarity. The grief and hurt remained, but they were now accompanied by a steely resolve I hadn't felt in years. At my home office desk, I created a detailed spreadsheet of every financial contribution I had made to Michael and Katherine's lives: the mortgage co-signing and monthly contributions, Jacob's preschool tuition, the down payment for their house, the wedding, the luxury SUV I had helped finance last year as a joint Christmas gift. The total was staggering over $250,000 in 5 years, not including the countless hours of free childcare I had provided. I called my friend Barbara, who had been a family law attorney for 30 years before retiring. Over coffee at her condo, I laid out the situation without emotion, as if presenting a case study. "I've enabled this behavior," I concluded, And now I need to know my options for extricating myself financially while protecting my relationship with my grandchildren. Barbara's expression was sympathetic, but direct. Sharon, this isn't just about money. They're exploiting your desire to remain connected to your son and grandchildren. She reviewed the mortgage documents I had brought and nodded thoughtfully. As co-signer, you have more leverage than they probably realize. And since many of these contributions were made without formal agreements, they would legally be considered gifts in a court proceeding. I don't want to take legal action, I clarified. I just want to stop being taken advantage of. Barbara leaned forward. Sometimes people only recognize boundaries when they're enforced through consequences. You've been carrying them financially while they exclude you emotionally. That's not a relationship, that's exploitation. Her words were harsh but true. I had played a role in creating this unhealthy dynamic one check at a time. Later that day, I called the catering company whose name I'd seen on Katherine's credit card statement, a statement that came to my house because I had co-signed for the card as well. Identifying myself as Katherine Hamilton, I inquired about the Christmas party order. Yes, Mrs. Hamilton, we have you down for the full holiday package for 40 guests on December 24th, the coordinator confirmed. 40 guests for a Christmas Eve party in the home I was helping to pay for on the holiday, from which I had been explicitly excluded. And could you confirm the payment method? I asked. We have the deposit on the MasterCard ending in 4578 with the balance due 2 weeks before the event. My MasterCard. The account I had added Katherine to for emergencies 3 years ago. Next, I called my bank and scheduled an appointment with their mortgage specialist. I learned that as co-signer, if I stopped contributing to the payments, it would affect Michael and Katherine's credit as well as mine. The specialist explained that the bank would contact all parties on the loan if payments were missed. I spent the next day carefully considering my options and the potential consequences of each. I wasn't acting out of revenge, but from a need to establish healthy boundaries that should have been in place years ago. That afternoon, I called the catering company back and canceled the order. I then contacted my credit card company and reported the card Katherine had used for the deposit as lost, requesting a replacement with a new number. I removed her as an authorized user on the account. Finally, I transferred my monthly mortgage contribution from my checking account to a new savings account I had established in my grandchildren's names for their future education money that would be there for them regardless of my relationship with their parents. The actions were practical rather than dramatic, but they represented a profound shift in how I valued myself and my role in my son's life. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of control returning. I was no longer a passive participant in my own exclusion. As I prepared for the inevitable confrontation, I felt strangely calm. I had enabled this situation through my desire to stay connected to Michael at any cost. Now I was choosing to redefine that connection on healthier terms, even if it meant temporary conflict. The reaction came faster than I had anticipated. 3 days after canceling the catering order, my phone rang at 8 a.m. Katherine's name flashed on the screen. "Sharon, there's been a terrible mistake," she began without preamble. "The catering company says our Christmas Eve order was canceled." I took a deep breath. "That's correct. I canceled it." The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. "You... what? Why would you do that? How did you even know about it?" "The order was placed using my credit card," I explained calmly. "The one I'm removing you from as an authorized user." "This is completely inappropriate," Katherine sputtered. "You had no right. Actually, I had every legal right to cancel charges on my own credit card." I interrupted, my voice steady. "Just as I have the right to decide how my money is spent." She hung up abruptly. 15 minutes later, Michael called, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Mom, what are you doing? Katherine is upset, and now we have to find another caterer last minute. Why would you interfere with our holiday plans?" "The same holiday plans I've been explicitly excluded from," I asked. "The party you're hosting on Christmas Eve in the house I helped pay for." Michael's tone shifted from anger to placation. "We talked about this. We're trying to establish our own traditions with Katherine's family. You and I can celebrate another time." "Michael, I've made another decision I should inform you about," I continued. "I won't be making next month's mortgage contribution or any future contributions." The silence was deafening. When he finally spoke, panic had replaced anger. "You can't do that. We budgeted for your contribution. The payments will be late." "Yes, they will," I agreed. "Unless you and Katherine rearrange your financial priorities." Michael's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Mom, we can't afford the full payment on our own yet. You know that. My partnership is still a year away, and Katherine just started her new position." "Then perhaps you should reconsider the 40-person holiday party or the kitchen renovation Katherine mentioned at brunch," I suggested. "Those seem like luxury expenditures for a budget that's already stretched thin." He hung up without responding. I had expected anger, but was surprised by how quickly the conversation had turned to money, rather than the relationship issues at the core of the problem. Less than an hour later, my doorbell rang insistently. Through the peephole, I could see Katherine standing on my porch, her expression thunderous. I opened the door and gestured for her to enter. "How dare you?" she began as soon as she crossed the threshold. "After everything we've done for you, including you in our lives, letting you be part of the children's lives." "Letting me," I interrupted. "You mean when you need free childcare or financial assistance?" Katherine paced my living room, her designer boots clicking on the hardwood floor. "This is so typical. Michael said you might become difficult as you got older, but I defended you. And now you're trying to ruin our Christmas and threatening our home." "I'm not threatening anything," I replied. "I'm simply ending financial arrangements that have enabled an unhealthy family dynamic." "What are you talking about?" she demanded. From my desk, I retrieved the folder containing my financial records. Over the past 5 years, I've contributed over $250,000 to support your lifestyle, not including countless hours of childcare. I placed the spreadsheet on the coffee table. During that same period, I've been increasingly excluded from family events, milestone celebrations, and now holiday traditions. Katherine glanced at the spreadsheet, her expression flickering between shock and calculation. "We never asked you to contribute so much. You offered because you wanted to help Michael." "Yes, I did," I acknowledged. "But there's a difference between helping and enabling. I wanted to support my son and grandchildren. Instead, I've been financing a lifestyle that apparently has no room for me except when convenient." The front door opened and Michael entered, having apparently followed Katherine after his call. His face was flushed eyes darting between us. "What's going on?" he asked warily. "Your mother is being ridiculous," Katherine said sharply. "She's threatening to stop helping with the mortgage because she's not invited to one Christmas." Michael picked up the spreadsheet, his expression changing as he scanned the numbers. "Mom, what is this?" "An accounting of my financial contributions to your life with Katherine," I explained. "I created it to help me understand how we arrived at a point where I'm excluded from Christmas while simultaneously asked for money in childcare." Michael sank onto the couch, still staring at the document. "I didn't realize. I knew you helped, but seeing it all together—" Katherine stood rigid, arms crossed. "This is emotional manipulation. You're trying to buy your way into our lives." "No," I said firmly. "I'm refusing to continue that arrangement. I won't be buying my way in anymore." Michael looked up, his expression troubled. "Mom, we never meant for you to feel excluded. It's just been easier to accept your help than to live within our means." "Easier for whom?" I asked gently. For the first time, I watched my son really look at his wife, seeing perhaps the calculation behind her actions. Katherine must have sensed it too, because her approach suddenly changed. "This is ridiculous. We're family," she said, her voice softening artificially. "Of course you're welcome at Christmas. We can make room for everyone. Right, Michael?" But the damage was done. Michael stood up slowly, still holding the spreadsheet. "Katherine, did you put the Christmas catering on Mom's credit card without telling me?" Katherine's face flushed. "I was going to transfer the money. It was just easier in the moment." "Like it was easier to have my mom pay for Jacob's preschool and contribute to the mortgage." Michael's voice had a new edge to it. "How many other financial decisions have you made assuming my mother would cover the gap?" Katherine's composure cracked. "Don't you dare put this on me. You've been happy to accept her money too, and now she's using it to control us." "I'm not interested in control," I interjected calmly. Only in respect and honesty. I'm happy to continue being part of your lives and the children's lives, but not as an ATM or on-call babysitter. I'm your mother, Michael, and the children's grandmother. That should mean something beyond financial convenience." Katherine grabbed her purse. "I'm not staying here to be attacked. Michael, are you coming?" But Michael didn't move immediately. He was staring at the spreadsheet, then at me, as if seeing our relationship clearly for the first time in years. "I'll be home later," he said quietly. "I need to talk to my mom." With a final glare at both of us, Katherine stormed out, slamming the door behind her. In the silence that followed, Michael and I looked at each other across a gulf created by years of unspoken truths. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice breaking. "I didn't see what was happening." "We both allowed it," I acknowledged. "Me by overgiving you, by accepting without question." We talked for hours that afternoon, having the first honest conversation in years. Michael admitted that their lifestyle was largely Katherine's vision, one they couldn't actually afford. He confessed to feeling trapped by financial obligations and Katherine's social aspirations. "I barely recognize myself anymore," he admitted. "I'm working 60-hour weeks to maintain a life I'm not even sure I want." When he finally left, things between us were raw but healing. He promised to really examine the dynamics in his marriage and our family relationships. The week that followed was painfully quiet. I didn't hear from either Michael or Katherine, though I received a drawing in the mail from Jacob with a note in Michael's handwriting saying, "Jacob misses his grandmother." That silent week gave me time to focus on my own healing. I reconnected with friends I'd neglected while prioritizing availability for Michael's family. I joined my neighborhood book club, which met on evenings I'd previously kept open in case Michael and Katherine needed last-minute childcare. I began planning a Christmas celebration that reflected my own values rather than attempting to meet Katherine's unattainable standards. I invited friends who had become like family over the years, particularly those who would otherwise spend the holiday alone. 10 days after our confrontation, Michael texted, "Can we meet for coffee, just us?" We met at a small cafe midway between our homes. Michael arrived first, already seated with 2 cups of coffee when I arrived. "I ordered your usual," he said with a small smile, "black with 1 sugar." The gesture touched me. He still remembered these small details despite everything. "Katherine and I have been talking," he began after I settled in, "or arguing to be more accurate, but it's been necessary." He explained that Katherine had initially been furious, threatening to cut me off completely from the children. But as the financial reality of their situation became clearer without my contributions, her anger had shifted to grudging pragmatism. "I've been going through our finances," Michael continued. "We've been living so far beyond our means, Mom. The truth is, Katherine and I have been using your generosity as a crutch to avoid difficult conversations about our priorities." He looked older, somehow more like his father in moments of serious reflection. "I also realized how much I've allowed Katherine to dictate our family relationships. She's always had strong opinions about how things should be, and it was easier to go along than to create conflict." "Marriage requires compromise," I acknowledged, "but not at the expense of other important relationships." Michael nodded. "We've started marriage counseling. I don't know if it will help, but Katherine agreed after I made it clear this was non-negotiable." He reached across the table to take my hand. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything, for taking your support for granted, for allowing you to be pushed aside. You deserved better." His apology was heartfelt, and I accepted it as the beginning of a healing process rather than an instant solution. "I'm sorry, too, for enabling patterns that weren't healthy for any of us, including your children." We agreed to start fresh with clearer boundaries. Michael would handle their financial responsibilities without my assistance. I would have regular scheduled time with my grandchildren that wasn't contingent on Katherine's social calendar or childcare needs. Christmas Day that year was different but meaningful. I hosted a small gathering of close friends, including my neighbor Ruth, who had recently lost her husband, and my former colleague John, whose children lived overseas. We prepared the meal together, shared stories, and created a warm atmosphere of chosen family. In the afternoon, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Michael stood there with Jacob and Emma bundled in winter coats and clutching small gift bags. "We had dessert at Katherine's parents' house," he explained with a slightly apologetic smile. "But the kids wanted to bring Grandma her presents." The children rushed to hug me excitedly, pulling handmade ornaments from their bags, while they showed my friends their creations. Michael whispered, "Katherine stayed at her parents'. This is a first step." That brief visit meant more than all the elaborate celebrations of previous years because it came from genuine desire rather than obligation. In the months that followed, our family slowly rebuilt on a healthier foundation. Michael and Katherine continued counseling, working through issues that went far beyond their relationship with me. Katherine's attitude remained cool, but civil, gradually softening as she adjusted to new financial realities. 6 months later, Michael called with news that they'd refinanced the mortgage without my involvement. It means a tighter budget and a smaller emergency fund, but it's what we should have done from the beginning. I established a separate relationship with my grandchildren based on quality time rather than expensive gifts or financial support. Jacob and I began a weekend tradition of visiting different parks around Chicago, while Emma and I bonded over baking simple treats. Holiday traditions were renegotiated to include meaningful time together, even if it wasn't on the actual Christmas day. We created a new tradition of celebrating Little Christmas on January 6th with simple gifts and favorite foods from Michael's childhood. Most importantly, I reclaimed my identity beyond being Michael's supportive mother or Katherine's convenient resource. I volunteered teaching financial literacy to single parents, drawing on both my accounting background and personal experience. I traveled to national parks I'd always wanted to visit, but had postponed in favor of being available for Michael's family. The most unexpected gift from this painful experience was the freedom that came with establishing boundaries. By standing up for myself that day after brunch, I had not only reclaimed my financial independence, but also my self-respect. The relationship with my son has been forever changed in many ways for the better. It's more honest, more balanced, and based on genuine connection rather than financial dependence. With Katherine, things remain complicated, but there's a grudging mutual respect that wasn't there before. What I've learned is that true family connections can't be bought or sold. They're built on respect, honesty, and mutual care. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do for our adult children is to stop enabling patterns that ultimately hurt everyone involved. And sometimes the pain of conflict is exactly what we need to find our way back to authentic relationships. That brunch invitation changed everything, not because of what was taken away, but because of what it ultimately gave back to all of us the truth. Has anyone in your family ever taken advantage of your generosity? How did you handle it? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of family transformation. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that establishing boundaries is an act of love for yourself and for others. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, it's never too late to reclaim your worth.